how to be a writer-producer, and there were no classes in that. There was no way to learn it. So I thought, well, I'll write a book about one of the greatest TV shows ever made, and I'll learn how to do it by talking to people who are doing it. And so by the time I was 22, I was writing that book, and by the time I was 22 or 23, I was writing for television. And so I started animation. I wrote a ton of animated shows like Smurfs and He-Man and Super Friends and you name it, real Ghostbusters. And then I jumped over to live action shows like Star Trek The Next Generation, Space Nine, and Sliders, and just on and on, hundreds of hours of network TV. And so I basically have written for all the major networks and studios. But I mentor a lot of young people. And I started hearing about Kickstarter and Indiegogo and the fact that people could raise money for their projects by going directly to their audience. And I was noticing that, science fiction I grew up with was really hopeful. You could, like with Star Trek, okay, there's menaces, there's dangers, but people can band together and people can actually create something positive out of the world. And in my own life, I'd realized that, compassion and love were important and real factors, and they were a counterweight to all the evil and destruction and tragedy in the world. But the science fiction was increasingly becoming dark and dystopic and hopeless, and like, Battlestar Galactica and Defiance and Oblivion and After Earth and, Elysium. I mean, I like some of these things, Battlestar Galactica, but where was the hope? Where was the possibility? Because I think that you're sending a message to your audience. And if you say there's no hope in the future and there's no point in banding together or helping each other because at the end everything is terrible, well, you're doing your audience a disservice and you're creating a world that's not necessarily a world we want to live in. So I came up with this idea for Space Command, which was basically, it covers 150 years in the future. It's 3 families, and it's 5 generations of these 3 families as we go out into space and we jump to the stars. And one family is a military family; they're in Space Command, and that's sort of like it's like almost the United Planets is like the United Nations, and this is almost like the peacekeeping arm of the United Nations, Space Command. And one family is a scientific family. It's the Odara family, and she's an archaeologist. And the third family is the Sikander family, and that initially is played by Robert Picardo of Star Trek Voyager, who played the holographic doctor on Star Trek Voyager, and he plays Yusuf Sikander, who's a Muslim. And because I thought, I wanted the world I was writing about to be like the world I'm living in. And it's made up of all sorts of people. And I thought that Muslims particularly were treated very badly in film and TV here in America. And I thought, I want to show a person who's, he's a Muslim, that's an aspect of spirituality, but it's not all of who he is. And he's a fully rounded human being without, so I have a friend named Yusuf Sikander, he's a Muslim from Afghanistan. He's a regular guy, and and that's just, he's a Muslim like I'm Jewish or something. Another friend's Catholic. I mean, it's just this aspect of spirituality, but they're still people. And so I wrote Yusuf that way. I named the character after my friend. And so we're shooting the first of 6 movies. So it's a big story. The 6 movies cover that 150 years. And I reached out to a lot of friends of mine who were wonderful actors who had been on shows that I'd written for and loved, like Bill Mummy from Babylon 5 and Lost in Space. This is Bill.
Lost in Space Command.
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Sci-Fi, the master himself. And it's a good thing. It's a real good thing.
Yes, exactly. And Mira Furlan from Babylon 5 and so forth. So yeah.
That's all you get. That's all you get.
Oh no, you can definitely talk to our people. They're here. And and so I just started. I wrote it, and I didn't know if it would work in terms of raising the money. I'd never raised money before, and I set the target to raise $75,000 in 2 months, and we ended up raising $75,000 in 3 days. Wow. and so we kept going, and in 2.5 months, in 2 months, we raised $221,000. But the project kept growing. It started as 1 film, and then it became 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6. And so I started selling investment shares to potential backers, and I wanted to make it a small enough amount of money so people could buy shares, just regular people, not industrialists, not millionaires. And I said 35 shares in the first film, and those sold out. And I was able to raise more money to make the first film. And I've now started selling shares in the second film, and those are starting to sell. And so my audience is underwriting the films. And the films can either be 6 features, or they can be also shown as 12 episodes of a season of a series, because it's just a big story. And it continues beyond that, too. and it can be novels and graphic novels and all of that. So so then we rent, and then I'm the only writer who wrote for both Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5. And the way it works is, you get a warehouse, you turn it into a soundstage, you build spaceship sets and, sets on other planets, and then you just shoot. And so that's what we've been doing. And we shot 45 minutes of the movie a couple months ago, and then we stopped because we had a big panel at Comic-Con, and, we wanted to not be that in the middle of shooting. And now we're shooting the rest of the movie, and we're shooting this week and next week, and we have about an hour of the movie shot, and by next week we'll have the whole movie shot. And then I've written first 4 films, I've started writing the 5th, I've outlined the 6th, so we'll just keep going. And so
when will the first one come out?
It'll come out in about, post-production will take 6 months to a year, depending on, there's a lot of effect shots, and so I'd say a year from now is a safe bet, maybe sooner if we can do it sooner. But the main thing for me, quality is so much more important than doing things quickly. I'm willing to take the time because, say you have money, quality, time, choose 2. So we don't have a lot of money, so we're choosing quality and time. And, so that's how we're doing it. But the quality of work, this is every bit as good as anything I've ever done for CBS or NBC or the Sci-Fi Channel. I'm very proud of what we're doing here. It's amazing what we're pulling off. And, but that's because the audience, I like people, and I'm collaborative, and I view everyone as my family, and so everyone's coming together and helping and making it happen. So yeah.
I'm a huge fan of you. I've been following you guys a long time. Huge fan of Babylon 5. Huge fan of Star Trek.
Yeah.
I absolutely love those shows. I actually help put on the science fiction conventions, and I'm a volunteer at SDCC.
Wow, that's great.
And I really, really have to say I appreciate everything that you guys do.
Thank you.
An old friend of mine used to work on the sound for Babylon 5 Season 4.
Well, that was a great show.
It was a great show.
Well, years ago I met a young writer who was writing for the newspapers, and he wasn't making a living. He wasn't really making ends meet, and he was very ambitious and very talented. And so I was writing animation at the time, as was my friend Michael Reeves, and he started writing animation. And I was hired to develop a show called Captain Power that was a live-action science fiction show. And I spent a year working on that show, developing it. And they wanted me to story edit it, but I was doing features at the time. And so I said, listen, I'm going to guarantee someone. He's never story edited a live-action show, but I'll guarantee him. If he can't do the job, I'll do the job. I'll step in. And they hired him, and that was Joe Straczynski. And Joe Straczynski, and the producers were John Copeland and Doug Netter. And so he created Babylon 5, and those were his producers. And then that's how I ended up writing for Babylon 5. And yeah, but you can tell, when you meet any of us, whether it's Rod Serling or Gene Roddenberry or Joe or myself or anyone who's doing it for the right reasons, they're doing it for the love of it. The first writer I ever saw in person was Ray Bradbury. When I was 10 years old, he spoke at a library. And he said, ideally, your life and your work and your art should all come from the same place. And I think that's probably the moment that I decided to become a writer. And I was very lucky because Ray became a very good friend and mentor in the last 10 years of his life. I would go over once a month to his house, and I would just hang with him and we'd talk about writing. And that was such a gift.
Yeah, it was a
Hello,
good gift.
Bill.
I'm just basking in his bossness.
Yes. Well,
I heard these Babylon 5
Yes.
comments coming out. I just wanted to see if they were accurate.
Yes. Well, Bill Mummy is a legend, and and the way we met is a great story. I'll tell that story. I'll tell it. You want to hang for a second?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world, dear boy. Carry on.
Well, I think that everyone I know would say that the general consensus is I'm pretty strange. Definitely. And so
This guy?
Yeah, this guy.
Not
and
at
so
all.
and so one day I was a big fan of Lost in Space, and it was on when I was a kid. And one day I was homesick. I was in my pajamas, and I decided to call.
Now he's telling us
Yes.
too much.
Yeah, and I decided to call the stars of Lost in Space. So I pulled out the phone book, and I started dialing the actors. And most of the people just had the same names, but there was one mummy in the phone book, and it was his dad. And his mom picked up the phone, and I said, "Is Billy there?" And she said, "Hold on." And when he came on the phone, I was so nervous. All I could do was say, "Will you be my friend?" and hang up. But then I called back.
And you wonder why I have an unlisted number now?
Yes, exactly. You learned. But I called back, and as soon as I was over my cold, my mom drove me there, and we traded comics.
We traded comic books.
Yes.
My motivation for this meeting was
of course.
he was teasing me on the phone with his I've got all these comic books. I hear you like comic books. Maybe we could trade. And I got the better end of the deal, as I recall.
And then we stayed friends over the years. And so
just like this.
And so we'd see each other. We went to different high schools. We'd come over to my high school sometimes, and we'd see each other. And then when I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion,
We went to the same high school.
Yeah, you went to Hanley?
Yeah, but I was only there
were
like a senior.
Right. Yeah. So I think
When you were working out the vector of odds.
Yeah, exactly. Way back when, this play I wrote in high school. So then, when I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion, I interviewed Bill because he was in 3 great episodes of the Twilight Zone.
That's true.
Yeah.
I helped you out with some photographs and things.
It was great.
And the Twilight Zone Companion, if you don't have it, it's still in print. Go get it.
Yeah,
It's definitely worth it. It's a great book.
But he was an astonishing actor, even as a child, phenomenal. I mean, the 3 episodes he did are all home runs. I mean, in Praise of Pip, phenomenal with Jack Klugman. It's a Good Life, which is oh my God, what a great episode!
It's a good thing. It's real good.
Yeah, exactly.
He's out of the cornfield for the moment.
That's right. And Long Distance Call, which was only one of only six episodes shot on videotape, black and white videotape.
Yeah, it's a creepy episode, but I'm not a videotape thing.
Yeah, a little funny. But then in Babylon 5, I wrote for it, and I came on the set, and we took pictures together, and we're hanging out. And I remember you complaining
it's just like making teeth, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I remember when you were talking about how you were pleased that when you finally got out of those prosthetics, all that makeup.
Yeah. When Mark said, getting this project together, Space Command, I'd love to have you be a part of it. My first, and we were on the radio, we were on Coast to Coast with George Norrie at that moment, and I was like, yeah, sure, as long as I'm a human.
Yes, exactly.
That was a deal breaker.
Yeah, exactly. And so in Space Command, basically you play like the Steve Jobs of the future. It's great, or the Bill Gates. It's terrific. It's fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to say.
I really think of them as the Ringo. No, I've said too much. I will leave you with Mr. Sci-Fi.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Bill. Thank you. Great. Okay, cool. So other questions, or what else would you like to know?
Yeah, actually, you were mentioning about how sci-fi has gotten really dark.
Yes.
And I've always thought that a lot of sci-fi movies nowadays are missing that sense of adventure that you get.
Yes.
And recently I had seen Guardians of the Galaxy, and it sort of felt like if I was watching, A New Hope or the original Star Trek series, or at least a new generation, next generation. And I was wondering, what would you think would fix the sci-fi genre now, make it more, upbeat and optimistic instead of so pessimistic?
I know.
And dark?
Well, I find it so ironic because so many of my friends, these writers, they're writing these dark stories, and yet they're living lives where they're making a lot of money. They're happily married, most of them. They go home to their families. They live in their nice houses. They live a good life where love and compassion and honor and loyalty and a good work ethic, these things all pay off. And so it's strange to me that they choose to present a worldview that's the opposite of what their own lives are. And so I think, a friend of mine, Bruce Joel Rubin, wrote the movie Ghost, and he was one of my mentors, also and a friend. And he said, most films and TV shows, if you ask the writer or the director or the producers or anyone working on them what they're about, and the answer is, well, they're about 2 hours because they're about nothing. They're about nothing. And so the first thing is you have to say to yourself, what am I writing about? What do I stand for? As I mentioned, I mentor a lot of young people in the industry, and I say, you have to decide, I say, what you stand for and what you won't stand for is the spectrum of your career. Your career will be between those 2 poles. But you have to know what you stand for, and you have to know what you won't stand for. And so, so I think vision and having your work reflect your life, and recognizing that there's good in the world, and not being a cynic. I'm not cynical at all. And so I think that's a big part of it. And the thing that's fun about Space Command is it's a big adventure story, but also the people, the characters, are people you can really love and people you care about, and there's moral choices. Because in Space Command, it's about people banding together, it's about people coming together, it's about people saying, well, wait a minute, I'm following orders, but are these orders right? Should I be following these orders? Or maybe the person I'm supposed to be capturing is someone that I should be helping let escape. There's all these moral questions. So no one gets off the hook. It's always because all of us have moral questions in our lives. And you can't check out. You can't just say, well, I don't have responsibility. Everyone does. And if the world's going to be a good place, you have to take responsibility. And you have to reach out to others. And you have to recognize that all the differences between people don't matter. And that's why I like the fact that in Space Command you've got Muslim characters and African American characters and gay characters. And Mira Furlan, in the first film, she's got a daughter who she loves, but by the end of the first film, we meet her wife, and the reason I have her in a gay marriage isn't the gay marriages in the news. It's because where are the gay women in science fiction? Where are the gay characters in science fiction? Particularly gay female characters, and it was what really kind of got my head going on all of this was Sally Ride was the first female astronaut, first American female in space. And when she died, they mentioned her longtime partner. And it was like, wait a minute, she's a gay woman? Why didn't people know that? Why don't the history books know that she was a gay woman? That's important. And Ray Bradbury, who was my mentor, his aunt was almost certainly gay, and she was his inspiration. And so I wanted to have as I say, I wanted my world, my universe in Space Command to reflect the world. And so the more it's varied, the more different ethnicities, the more different experiences. And Mira and her daughter, Mira Furlan, when I worked with her on Babylon 5, I knew she spoke Serbo-Croatian. She's from the former Czechoslovakia. So I met a young actress named Jelena Mirja who speaks Serbo-Croatian. I thought, well, they could play mother and daughter. So when they're talking to each other, they're often speaking Serbo-Croatian in the film. And then they're speaking English to everyone else. And so, because again, it reflects the world we live in. So yeah.
So where do you think Space Command is going to possibly go? In terms of, like, for instance, Guardians of the Galaxy,
yes.
it just grew with popularity overnight,
yes.
and it took 3 words from a lovable creature
yes.
just to make it so popular.
Yes.
Where do you think this is going to go compared to that?
Well, I have very high hopes for this project. But I deliberately have not chosen my distributor yet. A lot of distributors have been contacting us. In fact, even while I've been shooting, someone just called me yesterday that wants to distribute it, but I haven't been taking those offers because what I want is a big distribution platform. That could be a network or it could be a major thing like Amazon or Hulu, Netflix, but someone will really roll it out with a lot of marketing muscle, because I want it to be on the billboards, I want it to be on the bus benches, I want people to know about this project. And so that's a roll of the dice. We can give, our job here is to make a wonderful film, a wonderful series of films. So my hope is that it'll punch through like Star Wars or Star Trek or Guardians of the Galaxy. People don't know what they love until they see it, and then they love it. And the only reason they ever love anything is because it speaks to their heart. It has to. How many movies are there that have effects as amazing as Star Wars that no one cares about because they don't care about the people? So you have to have every movie that lasts has a profound truth at its heart. It has to. And so that's my hope for Space Command. Now, one of the fun things is I always say we're low budget, high ambition.
Well, so was Star Wars.
Yes, and so, but also my friends, many of my friends, because of where I come from, because I've done so many hours of network TV and film and all sorts of stuff. So, for instance, you mentioned Rocket Raccoon. Well, the designer, the person who designed Rocket Raccoon for that movie is my friend Ian McCaig, who also designed Darth Maul and Queen Amidala, who's our character designer on Space Command. That's why the costumes look so great, and everything looks really cool. And that's because I can reach out to a level of people that normally don't do small films, low budget films, and. Or even just getting these actors like Mira Furlan and Bill Mumy and Bob Picardo and amazing people. And someone who's coming in to play a general is Bruce Boxleitner. Bruce has not worked with Mira Furlan or Bill Mumy since Babylon 5, so that's going to be quite fun too. And so we're in coming Space Command movies we're going to have Armin Shimmerman from Deep Space Nine and Buffy, Ethan Phillips from Star Trek Voyager, many genre actors that I love and I just love working with. So I hope this thing punches through and just takes the world by storm. That'd be my dream. Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. It's the fact that we've already got 60 minutes shot and we have a rough assemblage of the film, and it's like you can see it's like it's really amazing. I'm thrilled. Even today I was shooting a scene with this ship, this patrol ship, and you live with it in your head and then you shoot it, and it's like, wow, that really works. You never know until the day. You write something and think, well, is this going to play? And then you bring these wonderful actors aboard, and there's stuff that you wrote, you thought, well, this is a little iffy, maybe I'll cut it out when I'm in post, and then they pull it off. Phenomenal. And then the other thing we did that was super cool, because I really love bringing in the world, and I was thinking that the world, 3,000 people around the world gave us the $221,000 for Kickstarter, and I thought, well, since the world is financing this, why don't we have 2 of the leads, not walk-ons, not one-liners, 2 of the lead roles? Why would anyone anywhere in the world could pull down the sides, off of our side, the audition sides, the audition scenes, and shoot their own video auditioning for 2 of the leads and send them to us, and we would look at them and have a talent search and choose 2 of our leads from that contest. And I didn't know if it would work. You never know. And so we got 7,000 inquiries, 1,200 videos for 2 roles, and 1 role could be either male or female. Cadet Bradbury, named after Ray Bradbury, my friend, and the other was Captain Jack Cameron. Well, that was a male role, but there was 1 woman who was gutsy enough to audition for Captain Jack Cameron, and she was so great that we called her in. We had a call back on her at the second audition, and she was spectacular. So I created another Captain Essex, of the sister ship Templar, and she's starring in this movie with the actor that I cast as Captain Cameron, Ethan McDowell, and Cadet Bradbury is a young actor named Brian McClure. So Ethan's from Wyoming, Brian McClure's from Iowa, and Sarah's from New York, and so we ended up actually casting 6 actors from that talent search, and in fact I think we may even be casting several more because I remember some other actors I want to plug in too. So but again, it's a different way of doing things. The networks aren't doing that. But I thought it's a new world. See, the problem with the networks and the studios is they're old school. They're not understanding that, emotionally I live in the 20th century, but I recognize that we're in the 21st. And that means that the entire world is a studio now. The entire world has people with cameras. The thing that science fiction never predicted was that we were going to have cameras in our telephones, and we'd put our telephones in our pockets. The telephone was something I dialed Billy Movie on a big old telephone, when I was 7. But now...
Like a fool, I answered.
You did. But nowadays... anyone, anywhere can make a movie. If they've got an iPhone, if they can, and so we're all in this business. Everyone around the world is in this business. Anyone who's shooting video, and so these actors are so wonderful. And you'll see them here in costumes. You'll see them shooting scenes. And the other part that's really fun is that my wife and I are directing and producing, and also writing some of it together. And we've written and directed and produced for many years. And so now we're running 2 units today. We're shooting in 2 different locations here in the park, in the industrial park. And so I'm shooting certain scenes, she's shooting certain scenes, so we can cover a lot of ground. And that's terrific too. So yeah. So what else would you like to know?
I was wondering, what do you want people to take away from this movie once they see it? Because I know you're talking a lot about how you're being diverse and you're getting all these characters that Hollywood really needs to realize that these are people too.
Yes.
What do you want people to feel? What do you want them to take away from the movie once the credits roll?
Yeah. Well, Ray Bradbury said to me once, looking back over a lifetime, you realize that love was the answer to everything. And so I think if it helps people, for instance, even Star Trek, it's funny, when I was a kid, I was a big Star Trek fan, and my mom had a boyfriend who was in show business. I was raised by a single mom, and he drove me over to this place. He said, I have a surprise for you. And he drove me over, knocked on a door, and Nichelle Nichols opened the door. It was her apartment. She was playing Lieutenant Uhura at the time. And she gave me a signed Star Trek script, one of her Star Trek scripts, Mimeo, not Xerox. This is the real deal. And I said, I was 10 years old. I was a smart kid, and I said, you have any more of these? So she reached in her wastebasket and pulled out 5 more scripts. Now, and gave them to me. I still have them. And the reason she was throwing them out was she was about to quit Star Trek because she felt they weren't giving her enough to do on the show. And she met Martin Luther King, and he said, you must not quit that show because it's the only African-American role that's not like a servant or menial. It's and you need to take that stand. And so she did. And because of that, people saw that you could have different ethnicities, different races in space getting along, being heroic. And so with Space Command, if it makes people less afraid of other people. Even, for God's sake, our lead character is a Muslim. If it makes someone just talk to a Muslim, instead of thinking, oh, this guy's a terrorist, so they just walk in and say, hi, my name's Mark. Tell me about yourself. Who are you? How's it work? That's fine. That's lots. The moment because nobody should be fighting a war. Nobody should be killing anybody. The thing that's so crazy about our species is we right now have the power to feed everyone, clothe everyone, give everyone medical care. If we just came together as a people, it could be paradise. Why isn't it paradise? Because there are only 2 predators that still kill us, really. The 2 predators are disease and man. That's it. We don't have to worry too much about lions. You go home today, you don't have to worry about a lion killing you, or a jaguar, or a python. That still happens, but not much.
When I'm driving the Jaguar,
yeah, exactly. Look out. But we play on each other. So I think part of the message of what I'm writing now is that open your heart. I think that's what I'm writing about. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.